So I'd just like to share our experience on water planning at the state level over the last 15 years. And 15 years ago, when I started working on the California Water Plan update, we were just coming out of a great amount of controversy from stakeholders, other agencies, who felt that the content of the water plan wasn't serving the state. And most saw it as the Department of Water Resources water supply plan. And we've now been on a transformation, on a journey where the 2013 update of the water plan was developed with the input of 28 state agencies. Every state agency sitting at this table is on the State Agency Steering Committee. We were able to pull recommendations and policies and information from 40 of the plans of these state agencies and show how it can make sense and move in a common direction towards sustainable water management in the California Water Plan. And so it takes a lot of meetings, it takes collaboration, it takes compromise, and it takes good communication, and finally, you got to have trust. And I think that's where a lot of the project implementations stall, because somebody in their own silo offers a project, the people adjacent to that person wasn't a part of that conversation, and the knee-jerk reaction is, wait a minute, how are you going to harm me? And so what the state of California now has embarked on is integrated regional water management. We've invested with the passage of Prop 1, $2 billion. We've got 48 regional water management groups, covers 87% of the state, 99% of the people. And what's happening for the first time is 3 or more entities have gotten together, created an integrated plan by mixing and matching their problems and assets. And they're figuring out that they can do more together in solving their own problems than they could on their own because of the cost effectiveness of pooling assets and pooling resources. So the reality is likely we're not going to get a lot more money out of the public at the state, federal, or local level, but we've got to do a much better job at leveraging those dollars to multi-benefit projects. Doing projects that can solve multiple resource problems and issues than we've done in the past. And so in the Water Plan 2013, we had 3 themes. We've got to integrate because interconnected systems have to have integrated solutions, and it's got to be at the appropriate regional scale. You can't have a one-size-fits-all, because it was noted there how big California is, and our regions are very different depending on where you are, and how they relate to the Sierra Nevada is different. So that's going to be an important consideration. The second is agency alignment. We live in silos. We have historically been tasked with solving our own resource issue without considering how it may affect or be affected by others. If we are serious as a state for integrated resource management, government, state, federal, local, has to align its policies, plans, and regulations so that we empower and make integrated solutions more successful. What we're hearing in the water plan, and the reason we made this the second theme, is when it comes time to doing a project, we're being pulled all over the board by different regulatory and state policy agencies on what can and can't be done. And we just can't do these integrated type solutions. And the third is we have to invest in innovation and infrastructure. And that investment, and I'd like to dovetail on what Chris Chernell said, every presentation I make with folks, I say, if you want to know what state government is going to do in water for the next 4 years, read the governor's water action plan and the implementation report. And what this has been, I think, a really new paradigm, because in the past, bonds passed, and then we scrambled to figure out how to spend the money. For the first time in my 37, 38 years at the Department of Water Resources, the Water Action Plan helped in a great way to frame Proposition 1. So the leveraging of those funds to achieve the 10 actions in the Governor's Water Action Plan was already thought of in advance. And so I think the Watershed Improvement Program, first and foremost, should find every opportunity for getting the watershed side through the Water Action Plan and the Proposition 1, because I think that is going to be our best opportunity to leverage. The other thing I'd like to mention is the water plan now has a toolbox of over 30 strategies. Forest management is one of them. 2 water plans ago, that wasn't the case. So we're recognizing in the water plan that we have to have a multi-resource approach to what we need to do.
Thank you, Kamiyara. I have Ken, and then I have BJ and Randy as our last 2. Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you, and I'll keep it brief because really, quite honestly, that every point here at the table has been has hit a home run. But I just want to focus in on the urgency piece as well. And if you ask my staff, sometimes I mistake the urgency piece for impatience because we want to get things done and real actionable things on the ground. And we can talk and plan a long time, and we have a lot of plans, and we've talked about a lot of them today, and we need to keep working on those. But when we talk about the Water Action Plan, and we talk about the Forest Climate Action Team, all of them have the same words, and they're all calling us not to take action building more plans, but to take the plans off the shelf and get on the ground and do some things. And some of the dialogue we've been having have to do with these large landscape level, whether you call them pilots or demonstrations, but the governor had an opportunity under the Healthy Forest Restoration Act to identify 3 priority watersheds that we felt as a state we should ask the Forest Service for consideration. And he did that, and that support came down, for that. And obviously one of those was the El Dorado. And, prior to the King Fire, actions were already starting under that, and some streamlining of the NEPA processes as the law allows. And then, lo and behold, the King Fire happens in this very same area. And I think right now we have some social license to build on some things that are already going. We've got the public's attention there. We just need to take some targets of opportunity and anchor in and start showing people that we can do some things. They don't have to be perfect yet. We don't have to have the complete plans built out, but with the areas where we know we can work, we know we have agreement, we just need to start doing things and bring some people along. And I think sometimes, and us included, we just get caught up in maybe sometimes overthinking or trying to build the perfect mousetrap. And we just need to get it far enough down the road to where we know we can start having successes and do it. No different than Chuck. We had to turn into high gear for, the department received $42 million in cap and trade funding. First time that we've invested money in cap and trade in the forest sector this way. And so we took established programs, a suite of 7 program areas. They were already proven programs, and built the very same thing, built a grant program to reach out to those particular disciplines within the forest sector. And we are right now, or just in the last 2 weeks, have solicited the project applications so that we can go forward. And so we have a lot of opportunity, a lot of work to do, but we just need to start focusing on getting a few things done and letting it grow.
Will you do the same sort of screening for those grants that Chuck's done?
We have a process where they're screened programmatically, or they're screened locally by our units that are more familiar with the project area, and then they are rolled up for an executive level review across the board. And the key criteria, and again with the greenhouse gas projects, they've all gotten, and Ashley talked about, they've all got to have this carbon metric piece. And that has been a lot of help and guidance from ARB and EPA getting us there. But again, and Ashley and I had this conversation with our staff the other day, it's, if we argue over the science forever, we'll never get there, but we've just got to get to that 80-90% level that we know we're comfortable we can defend and go forward. And so the biggest challenge has been just making sure we're comfortable, that the attorneys are comfortable, that we can all stand behind demonstrating that forests, and this is where it comes down to, and Ashley sold me on this, and it's, forests are the one place where we can take carbon sequestration the other way. It's not a reduction in greenhouse gas emission, it's going past that and actually sequestering more. And we really haven't thought about that as much as we should have in the past in the forest sector. But proving that has been the challenge. And so we've got work to do, but we may make errors, we may make some mistakes, and we'll change course and we'll move on. But we just have to dig in and do it and take the risk, like I think you said earlier, Dave.
Okay, thank you, Ken. I'm going to go to BJ.
I'm an LA environmental lawyer, and I have to tell you, I've really learned a lot
and I think there are so many good points that I don't have any new points to add. So I just want to say one thing. I want to thank Jim Branham with the Conservancy, because we talk at the Sierra Nevada Conservancy a lot about being a convener. And if this isn't the best example of convening that we've ever done. So I want to thank you, Jim, and thank Forest Service, Randy, and Barney for being our partners.
So just so people know where we are, I was informed we have a very hard deadline of 4:35, so we got 5 extra minutes. I want to do a quick summary of 6 pieces, 6 themes that came up, and then I want to take 1 or 2 comments or questions from the public, and then we're going to do a little bit of wrap-up. I need a few more minutes with the panelists. Urgency, first one, not going to go into detail on that. Second one, working at the landscape scale. You have existing collaboratives that are building the tools, building the social capital, building the trust. You need to move to that project level, larger size for the projects. Third piece, clarifying the shared value, the holism, right? The summit to the sea, rural plus urban. With that whole value, that shared value, you have shared risk, you have shared responsibility for bold action, not simply regular action, and also sustained action over time, the interagency work, public-private partnerships. Fourth piece, pilots and experimentation. People have things that work, replicating them, the approaches for planning and also for delivery was a fourth theme that came out. Fifth piece, the need to increase capacity. It's partly in the field, it's partly in markets, it's partly institutional. Sixth piece, this kind of pulls it together. The need to prioritize several things in advance, like Kamiar was saying, not after you have the money. Policies, plans, regulations. Which ones do you need to align? Which ones are the most important impediments to address? Second thing to prioritize, locations, anchors. We heard in Lee's presentations, watersheds. Which ones are most vulnerable? Third piece, prioritize investments, and part of that's multiple benefit projects. So I just want to give a quick summary of the themes I heard. Let me get 2 hands or so. I'll go with Frank first because I honored that. And then, gentlemen, what's your name? Bert, and then I'm going to go with a third hand I saw here, and then I'm going to go back to the panel. So let's get Frank and Mike, and then I'm going to ask you guys if we can take your 3 comments at once, just so we get them all up there before they have any response. Then I'll let them respond. Go ahead, Frank, and then Bert, and then this.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had three comments, and I appreciate John's comment about the issue of NEPA. We have the same problem at the state level with CEQA. CEQA, though, has adjusted so we can get projects done in a quicker process. We need that kind of work, Randy, at the federal level on NEPA. We need to shorten the process and strengthen it, and you need to be able to prevent from frivolous appeals and lawsuits. That'll stall you big time. And yes, I go along with Dave, we need to increase the manufacturing capacity, but maybe we need to work with the Public Utilities Commission that raises the rate that they can charge the utilities to buy the power that they generate from this biomass going in. We've lost a lot of plants because we haven't addressed that issue. And then the thing that I think we really, and I'd like to suggest that you have a meeting on, and nobody talked about it, is a new authority that the Forest Service has had, and it's called Good Neighbor Authorities. And with the billions of dollars that we citizens in California have passed, and the amount of that money that's supposed to go to reduce carbon problems and improve watersheds, those funds could be used on federal ground to address that issue under the director and the governor's responsibility. I really would encourage a meeting of that. It is a one tool that would help address the problem the Forest Service has with mans. They can hire contractors through this process to do this NEPA work as long as they come out and qualify it. And so I really encourage that the Good Neighbor Authorities be fully explored to help increase the pace and scale to reduce the problem that Randy's talking about on public lands.
Thank you, Frank. Bert?
Just a quick comment onto the some of the grant money that we're looking at. I'm a county supervisor. I was first elected to the board, Tama County, in 1980, so I've been around a while. The cooperative efforts that you've talked about today is great, but you need to bring it down to the lower level. Work with those counties and work with the county supervisors and work with the locals. There's no trust out there. I hate to tell you this, but the curtailment orders from the state board has just devastated our watershed program we have on Mill Creek as far as being able to get any trust in anything done. And Chuck, one of the reasons that we don't get anything done as far as small grants and so on, we don't have the capacity. What I would suggest that you do is use some staff members to work with us to develop grant programs. It would develop a trust between them and us. Number one, they have the expertise to do it, and we'd be far more successful as far as collaborative on a lower level instead of way up here.
Thank you, Bert. Sarah?
Hello, Sarah Green, Executive Director of the Alpine Watershed Group. I'd actually like to direct my question asking Barney to elaborate briefly on the brilliant idea of working together. I think we all want to do that more. What do you foresee within your own agency that looking like at the local level? What can staff, all of our staff, be doing differently to work together better?
Thanks, Sarah. Please.
So one of the biggest things that we're really emphasizing at the region is integration amongst the different programs. You know, for me, as I think about my history in the agency, nearly every program area has a list of projects that they have. And so when the funding comes down, they start down that list of priorities, but in many cases, unless we kind of really reinforce integration, they're out doing those projects without necessarily talking to each other. And so that's one of the pieces I think that's really important. And you know, as I said a little earlier, that's why I think it's really important or exciting in this process right here, because I think we can do that. If we took just a couple different watersheds, whether it could be the Feather River or American River, and you say to each agency, could we get your list of top 5 projects in those areas? And then we can get together and talk about it on how you pull together those resources and how it can expand. You know, so those are the things that we have to do, and a big part is changing behavior. And so I think if we can get to that piece of, instead of the place of where we're accustomed to competing against each other for resources, now if we change that mindset of how do we pull what resources we do have together, I think it can go a long way. So as a start for us is really looking at how do we integrate all of our different programs, and then really how does it benefit each one of those different programs, you know, with the different programs and projects we do in the region.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Very quickly, one of the things that we looked at with the Northwest Forest Plan many years, or the Northwest Economic Adjustment Initiative, $1.2 billion of expenditures, what we saw there were agencies working together to implement a program. It can be done, again, it has been done successfully, but it's a huge challenge. As folks have mentioned, agencies work in silos unto themselves, and agencies don't necessarily work together, which is not to say that none of these agencies do, but it is a challenge. And I just wanted to underscore this issue of it is a challenge that we have to overcome to be successful on a watershed basis. So when we talk about collaboration, let's make sure we talk about collaboration of those folks and the interests on the ground and in communities and in these areas, as well as collaboration among the agencies and within those agencies.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jim, let me know. Go ahead, Vance, and then we'll take 1 or 2 last comments. I got Steve. I'm just going to actually ask before Steve and John, because other people haven't spoken, people that haven't. Let me go to Vance, and I want to just check if there are people that haven't spoken. If they haven't, then I'll come to you. Vance?
Just a quick comment related to that. One of the we have 2 priority sites in California that are 2 of 14 sites where we're investing more funds. We're sort of mile deep, inch wide in those places rather than our other grants programs, and they're on the Angeles National Forest and the Tahoe. The Tahoe and the Truckee River is really interesting because for the most part, the nonprofits that work there and that are there locally, and the others that are working together with us there, including the Nature Conservancy and Sierra Nevada Conservancy, work together. They're not competing, and they've seen that the rising tide floats all boats there. That's led to project prioritization, and more funds have come in to do work on the Truckee River. And on the Angeles, it's kind of getting to Hugh's point. It's a totally different world there. It's a totally different ecosystem. There's 17 million people within an hour's drive of that forest. But there's also hundreds of different nonprofits and organizations that work around that area, and it makes it much more difficult to collaborate. We're helping out with the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument Collaborative, and we've spent with a steering committee of local agencies the better part of the last 2 months trying to figure out how 50 people can represent that area, not several thousand. So that's the big challenge in a different place like Los Angeles. It's much more complicated, and there has been a lot of money invested in that area, but it's not as coordinated. So I just wanted to emphasize that point of agency, nonprofit, and private sector collaboration leading to more funding, more coordinated funding, and doing things at a larger landscape scale.
Thank you, Vance. Let me just check. Anybody that hasn't spoken, I see one or two hands, people that have comments who haven't spoken. Okay, go ahead, John, and then Steve. Go ahead. We'll take our last two comments. We'll see where we are. We got a couple minutes. Go ahead, John.
John Amadeo, Tuolumne River Trust. This can be a very sobering, indeed depressing subject, but I want to commend you today because I found it a very uplifting discussion. I want to echo the appreciation for the leadership of the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and Forest Service. We certainly have benefited from it at the Yosemite Stanislaus Solution Collaborative. I just want to touch on one point, the one about building the public will. I was on a panel last week at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco. It was a follow-up on Rimfire 1 year after. And if you would think that San Francisco, and it was a packed room, we had capacity crowd, if you would think that San Francisco would be well informed about what's happening with the Sierra and the urgency, I'm afraid that's not the case. And it's very clear that two things I would suggest. One of you is that, as one friend says it well, it's important to commit truth. And that means, in my mind, some of the things you were saying today about the urgency and the importance and the many benefits and the many kind of consequences of failing to act really need to be communicated regularly, clearly, emphatically, from our government officials. I once was one, and I know it's a lot easier to sometimes put on the smiley face. I appreciate the candor and the honesty. And secondly, I think us non-government folks, we have a real responsibility, and we're starting to explore what I kind of dub as a potential Big Ten approach of trying to find all the beneficiaries of the various forms of Sierra wealth and bring them together in at least a coordinated, if not unified, public education and engagement campaign. We really have that responsibility, and without people being informed, we're never going to build that political will that the gentleman emphasized is needed. So thank you.
Thank you, John. We'll go Steve and then Jennifer as our last comment.
I just want to try to understand. Today's summit is indicating a sense of urgency and a call to action. My question is, are you looking for a catalyst project in order to develop the framework for multi-agency participation, whether it's state, federal, or local? My feeling is that there's already shovel-ready projects that are out there. Some of them are partially funded. For example, we're involved with a bioenergy facility down in the southern Sierra. We've been partially funded. We're just looking for a little bit of additional resources. We've got our conditional use permit, and just got notified by PG&E that the electrical independence test has passed, and so now we're looking at system impact study. We have funding for that as well. We also have additional funding for construction of the facility by the California Energy Commission through an EPIC grant, but we still need your help. We need a lot of focus and attention on this project. So I'm willing to carry this discussion during later on, but I think it's really important to get one project completed on the ground, operational, as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Jennifer, our last comment, and we'll check in with the table.
Well, that was synchronicity, because what I wanted to talk about is Placer County's biomass facility project that we've been working on for about 10 years. It's through every hoop. The Center for Biological Diversity grudgingly did not sue us on it. But what we find is it's really hung up, it and other projects for environmental restoration are really hung up through two things. One, lack of education to the general public. Those of you who are Monty Python fans will understand my reference when I say there are a lot of folks out there who think every tree is sacred. It's not, and we need to do a better job of educating people about that. The other piece goes to I think what Bob was talking about and what Carrie was talking about a little bit earlier, which is making the benefits known to downstream users. I mean, in our case, we're talking about electricity and biogeneration, but it's a watershed improvement project at its heart. It's economic, it's environmental, and it's social. And until we can get past the economic hurdle to ourselves in terms of generating electricity, which is expensive compared to other sources, it's going to be a really hard sell to do what we all know is right. And I'm going to be the really weird county supervisor and say, we work really well with the various agencies at this table. Ken Pimlott and I work well together. Randy Moore, the Forest Service, and Placer County have worked really well together. But we need to get those same incentives that go to solar and wind and other renewable resources. We need to make sure they are available for bioenergy, particularly biomass out of the forests. And I'm going to leave it at that because it was my counterpart, Nate Beeson from Nevada County, who said, we all know what the problem is. We do in this room, but you go out into the general public and they don't recognize 98% of what we've been talking about. So we need to do some education.
Thank you, Jennifer. So we're just about at that time. I want to do one thing, and then I want to see if there are any final comments before we close. So right now, as your guest facilitator for the day, I just want to check, are you collectively willing to develop and implement the Watershed Improvement Plan? I mean, I'm looking for an enthusiastic yes. Where's the urgency? Yes? Are we committed? Okay, because the point of today really was to get a sense of that urgency and to hear the different pieces and connections that people have and hopefully find something of value that you really want to support and go forward. So we did want to get a soft touch and check in on that. Let me just check, are there any other final comments or words of advice from any of the panelists before I go back to Jim and Randy to close? Go ahead, Ashley.
I guess I just want to say, in response to a lot of these comments, I think you're right. In this room, we all speak the same language, and I think we share the same sense of urgency. And it's up to every single one of us to go out and educate our neighbors, our friends. California is what it is as a state because of our resources. We would not be who we are without our coastline, without our forests, without our streams. All of us know this. And I think we can put dollars and cents on that, and I agree with the comments on trying to quantify the social costs, but we actually have to embed a desire to protect those resources now and into the future in all of our friends and neighbors who don't think firsthand about doing that. It has to be a part of our daily lives. And so I think every single one of us have to take on that charge, whether we're in the policy realm, the academic realm, the nonprofit realm, that when we talk about nature in California, we talk about how it's iconic. It is an integral part of this state, and California wouldn't be what it is without it. And we can't accomplish any of our goals in the climate sector and any of these other sectors without actually focusing on nature.
Okay. Any final other comments from any of the panelists? Okay, let me turn it back over to Jim and Randy.
I think it's appropriate you have the last word. Thank you, Randy. So, this has really been a good discussion here. Whether I'm talking to Ken Pimlott or Barney or Jim, we sit around and we come to the same conclusion. We know how to do this. And we've had some successes. We can go all across the state and you can see successes at a small scale. And yet we're perplexed that if this is a good ideal and if we are seeing successes across the state, what's the problem with trying to magnify what we're doing and multiply that on a scale that makes a difference? And I look at even us, and I know we're all the same in some ways and yet we're different, but let's just say Forest Service, we all have our different pots of money that's been allocated and we spend it according to the different pots. And tradition says that everybody gets a little bit. And so therefore, we always get a little bit done at the end of the year. But when you look at are you making a difference? And maybe we're making a little difference in little places, but we can't say that we're making a big difference in a big way to stop what's happening out on the landscape. And I worry, Ken and I have shared the same thing as land management agencies. I worry that the conditions on the lands, it's causing lives. And I worry that conditions on the landscape is affecting the water supply, particularly during drought times. This is our 4th year going into that. I think we may be at 12 to 17% snowpack of normal hue, whatever normal is, right? And so I worry about these kinds of things, and I know that if we talk to every agency head here, we all feel the same in our way. So what's stopping us from working together in a way that would make a difference? And, you know, most things significant happen when moments are created. And I wonder if this is an opportunity to create a moment for us here in California. I find myself, even though I wasn't born and raised in California, I find myself defensive of California. And as I've gone across the state, the country, really looking at how communities have come together and how they're making a difference out on the landscapes, and I look at the challenges we have here in California, and I think that we're better than what we are. And so I find myself defending us, because I am us. I'm a part of us. You're a part of us. And we lead the country in so many different ways. We do. What happens in California matters. And so goes California in a lot of ways, so goes the country. I always say that it's a management indicator of what's going to happen in the rest of the country in many ways. And then I'm wondering, if that's the case, what would it take for us in this room to come together to demonstrate, not pilot, but to demonstrate that we can make this work? You know, we talk about our resources, and I say, you know, we've said, and that's conservatively, 50% of the water in this state comes off or through national forests. And if you had to put a value on that, I'm sure economists can put a value on that. And if you look at what that water provides, whether it's our wildlife species, whether it's our farm industry, whether it's our drinking water, it's significant. And so I think it's perhaps time that we stop talking about targets, productivity, start looking at values created, and what's at risk to those values that we depend on. And so I think we have a neat opportunity here, and I think we have an opportunity to create a moment. But I would say, what do we do next from this meeting? This was an excellent start in bringing the people that matters to do something significant in the Sierras. But what do we do next? You know, do we get a small steering committee together? I don't know. Do we select a watershed to demonstrate that we can make a difference? And so do we monitor ourselves or hold ourselves accountable? Do we have another meeting to say, okay, we've come up with an area? And I know everything is place-based, so I don't want no one to feel like they're left out, but it's an opportunity to demonstrate that we can lead out on this. And so I'm sure Jim would be more than willing to hear from folks who would want to be on maybe a small steering committee so that we can further this conversation and actually have a project where we can demonstrate that we can do this. So again, I know that everyone is busy. I really appreciate and thank you all for taking time to be here. It demonstrates that you care, and that I think together we can really make this work.